Then on Sports Central, we go for our next team prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over the Colorado Buffaloes, a team that went 1-11 in the 2022 season, but despite that, is one of the most anticipated teams as we look forward to 2023, and a big part of that is because of the takeover of Coach Prime. He has brought a whole new energy to this program, and this is a team that has got some high expectations for the future. But how will the first season be under Deion Sanders? Will this team return to contention anytime soon? We'll be talking about it here today. We're going to be analyzing this team and predict their schedule game by game in this video. Let's get started with a quick recap of 2022. And what can I say about 2022 other than it was just a terrible season for this team? This was just a horrible team last season. 1-11 was the final record. Their only win came against Cal on October 15th, 20-13, and it went in overtime. That was the one win this team had last season, and otherwise it was just a total train wreck. I mean, look back to week 1, week 2, lost to TCU 38-13. Surprise, TCU ended up in the national championship. And then, of course, the lost to Air Force 41-10, lost to Minnesota 49-7. I mean, from that point on, it just didn't really get much better. And down the stretch, this team lost. I mean, their last 4 games in November, they lost each of those games by an average of like 40 points. It was just a terrible, just a bad team last season. And so I'll say this as well as we look forward to 2023 and a roster preview as well. This team is going to be completely different next season. This is going to be a totally different team. I mean, this team has got very few starters returning. I mean, and honestly, I mean, that's something you got to look at with teams and predicting teams. Usually how it goes is if a team is returning most of their players, they could be a really solid team in the upcoming season. But if it's the opposite and the team is losing a lot of their experience, a lot of their key players, that usually means that a team could be not as good, maybe decline a bit. But for Colorado, it could honestly be the total opposite. This team being 1-11, just horrible as they were last season. This is a team losing almost all of the key players from last season. And honestly, I think that's for the better. JT Shroud is transferring out. Owen McCown's transferring out. I mean, the majority of this team, the starters on this team from last season, have hit the transfer portal and are headed to other places. You look at the backfield, Deion Smith is gone. Alex Fontenot's gone. Anthony Hankerson, the third running back of this team from last season, is one of the only returners on this offense. I mean, it's pretty incredible what Colorado and what has happened to this team with the new era of Deion Sanders. I mean, you look at the receiving core, Jordan Tyson gone, Montana Lamonius Craig is gone, Daniel Arias is gone, 4 on the offensive line gone, and these are your key players from last season defensively. Not all these players were starters, but they at least had a key impact on this team, and so 5 on the D-line are gone, 6 linebackers are gone, and 8 impact players from the secondary are gone. So, I mean, and most of those players have transferred out too, by the way. I mean, this is just going to be a totally different team. I mean, it's a complete roster reset is what it is for the Buffaloes. And as I mentioned before, with a 1-11 record last season, just as bad as this team was, honestly might be for the better. And I mean, if this were any other team losing this many players, you'd be extremely concerned. You would think, oh man, this is a team where they're just a complete train wreck right now. They're just going to be a disaster. But honestly, I mean, the way that this team is looking, some of the transfers, I mean, this team could be decent in 2023. I do think first year under Deion Sanders, I do think it's going to be a rebuild season. I mean, this is a team that is very much just in an upstart phase right now with complete revamp of this roster. But I do think, I mean, in the future with Coach Prime, we've seen him have plenty of success in the past. I do think he brings success to this team eventually, but will it be in 2023? That's the main question that many are asking. I don't know if it's going to be 2023, but I do think the future is at least bright for this team. That said, let's look at the transfer portal and recruiting. And if I just read every name off of this list, it would take forever, so I'm not going to. But of course, Shedeur Sanders coming in from Jackson State, he's going to be the starting quarterback of this team. Which he was with Deion at Jackson State, and so he's got some experience. I think he's going to be a solid quarterback for this team. JT Shroud's off to Arkansas State, Owen McCown off to UTSA, Brendan Lewis off to Nevada. So basically the entire quarterback room has left from last season. Alton McCaskill's coming in from Houston, and Smoke, running back's coming in from Kentucky. So, I mean, the backfield looks pretty good for this team with Smoke and McCaskill. I do think the backfield's going to be good. I think Sanders is a solid option at quarterback. The receiving core, Jordan Tyson off to Arizona State. Lemonius off to Arizona. You got a couple players coming in from South Florida, Jimmy Horn Jr. and then Xavier Weaver. Both of them expected to be two of the top receivers on this team. Looking forward to the upcoming season. Javon Antonio listed as a wide receiver 2, so he is also named to keep an eye on. Offensive line, obviously Roddick off to Florida State. Got Washington coming in from Kent State. You got Tyler Brown coming in from Jackson State. Otherwise, Landon Beebe, offensive lineman, is coming from Missouri State. Leonard Payne coming in from Fresno State. Jordan Dominic, expect him to have immediate impact. He's coming in from Arkansas. And then Dave Harris coming in from Old Dominion. Shane Coates coming in from Dartmouth, defensive lineman. And then Jalen Sammy, defensive lineman, is off to Michigan State. You bring in a couple linebackers, Demouy Kennedy from Alabama, and then Vontae Bentley from Clemson. Mr. Williams in the transfer portal. Aubrey Smith is off to Houston. Got Jeremiah Brown coming in from Jackson State. So you got multiple players coming in from Jackson State, as you'd expect. Travis Hunter as well, defensive back. He's a notable name. And also from Jackson State, Cameron Silman. Miles Slusher is coming in from Arkansas. Safety, Nico Reed. Defensive back is off to Oregon, and then Breedlove, defensive back, is coming in from Ole Miss. So a lot of, obviously this team, the complete revamp that it's been, a lot of moves in the transfer portal, and I mean that was a lot of names I just listed off there, and that wasn't even all of them. Those were just your key names, your most notable names on the transfer portal for this team. Recruiting wise, this team is 29th in the country, 5th in the Pac-12, 3 4-stars coming in, and then 16 3-stars. So top 30 in the country, 5th in the Pac-12. Overall recruiting has been pretty good for Colorado. But I mean, all things considered here with the transfer portal, the recruiting and everything, the recruiting, that's obviously a sign of a bright future when you're one of the top teams in your conference, top 30 in the country. I mean, and I just want to say as well, I mean, you consider this is a totally different team in 2023. I mean, I'm just going to show you guys screenshots of the depth chart, which is as of late May. So this is just updated basically the day before this was uploaded. And those names in orange that are on the depth chart, those are new players to this team. Those are players transferring in to this team, and they've got no experience with Colorado so far. I mean, you consider the top players, the player ones, those are your starters primarily. Only 3 starters return for this team, and that is something that you just never see. This is the first time I've seen anything like this, and it's pretty remarkable to see the amount of new players. All those orange names are new players to this team. So, I mean, who knows how good this team is going to be. All these players have never really played with each other for the most part. I mean, you got a few players from Jackson State, a couple from South Florida that have played with each other, but I mean, otherwise, this is a totally different team. And so it's just so interesting looking at this team and what Coach Prime has done, the energy that he has brought. And so for all we know how this team is going to be in 2023. But on the future forecast meter, still got this team at a 7 out of 10. It's kind of in the middle of the 6 and the 7 just because I'm cautiously optimistic. I mean, this team was horrible last season. I mean, who knows? Maybe Prime isn't quite as, maybe the hype is a little too much and this team doesn't follow through with it. But I think it does. I think Coach Prime, he is a proven excellent coach, and I do think that he brings success to Colorado. But will it be in 2023? I don't know if it's going to be this upcoming season, but maybe in 2 or 3 years from now, it will be noticeable, and this team could be a contender in the Pac-12. But that said, let's take a look at the schedules we look forward to 2023, and this schedule is not easy for Colorado, especially a team that's very much in an upstart phase right now. I mean, the first 2 games are against Power 5 opponents. A road trip to TCU, who is just in the national championship, and then Nebraska at home after that. Then you got Colorado State at home. That's, I mean, one of your only very winnable games on the schedule, as that's your 3rd non-conference game. And then Oregon on the road, USC at home, 2 brutal Pac-12 games there. Arizona State on the road, Stanford at home, UCLA on the road after your bye, Oregon State at home, Arizona at home, Washington State on the road, and then Utah on the road to finish out the regular season. So your last home game comes 3 weeks to the end of the regular season, as your last 2 games are on the road. But looking at September here, so you got TCU on the road. I do think, I mean, if you guys have watched any of my previous videos, I do think TCU falls off a bit in 2023. Don't see them being quite as good. I see them kind of falling off similar to how Baylor did from 2021 to 2022. I don't know if TCU goes 6-6. but they're still, I see them maybe 8 to 9 wins. Either way, still a solid team in TCU, and in week 1, I just don't see Colorado really standing a chance there. So I do think you lose that game. You come back the next week to take on Nebraska. Obviously, Nebraska just in an interesting spot right now. Matt Rule, first year for that team, and Matt Rule. So I mean, both Nebraska and Colorado at that point in the season might be a mess, but I do think it's going to be a closer matchup there. I still got to go with Nebraska just because, I mean, once again, you consider Colorado, this is a totally different team. Hardly any of these players have played with each other. It's going to take some time at the start of the season to get warmed up with these players, and it's going to be rough at the start, I do think, for Colorado. And so I do think you lose to Nebraska, 0-2 start of the season, then Colorado State, you get a win there. Maybe a close game. I do think Colorado State, I mean, Colorado's probably the better team, but I do think it's a close match if you get the win there. And then Oregon on the road. I'm going to take the Ducks there. Bo Nix, that is a complete football team. I could see them definitely being in the college football playoff this season. That's going to be one of your best teams in the conference. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if they won the Pac-12. So a 1-3 start to the season, but once again, this is just a really tough start to the season. This would be a perfect, if Colorado could have 3 non-conference, maybe group of 5 matchups to start out the season, that would be perfect for this team once again. But that's just not the way it is. You got a couple of tough non-conference games, especially against TCU. But then on the 30th, you got USC. I just don't see us standing a chance there as well. Caleb Williams, that offense is going to be incredible in 2023. I just don't see this defense being able to handle that. So you lose to USC, then Arizona State on the road. This is a winnable game. It is on the road, which I'm not very confident about this team. And I mean, just not great teams in road games. But Arizona State, it's a winnable matchup. I think you're going to hang in there, keep it a close game, but I'm going to take the Sun Devils in the end there. Stanford, you come back, you beat them, so that's going to be a solid conference win. Stanford, one of the worst teams in the Pac-12, but at least a win's a win there. And then you got UCLA on the road if you're a bye. UCLA, I don't think is going to be quite as good in 2023. I still can see them around 6 to 8 wins. So I do think you lose that game there. So you're 2-6 heading into November. Oregon State at home. I think it's honestly a matchup where you could get a really solid win. Oregon State, I could see them right around 7 to 9 wins once again in 2023. You got them at home. I do think that's a winnable matchup. Oregon State's probably the better team when it comes down to it, but it's a winnable matchup at home where you could get definitely a significant win, but I'm going to favor Oregon State. But you have another chance against Arizona. Then the next week you do beat Arizona, so you get another win there in a close matchup. That's also a very winnable game. Then you got 2 road games to finish out the regular season. Washington State and Utah. I do see winning or losing both of these, even though Washington State I'd say is a winnable matchup. Utah is going to be a tougher team next season. I see them being one of the top teams in the conference once again. So I mean, I got this team at 3-9 this upcoming season. I do think, I mean, there is a lot of hype around this team. Obviously, Coach Prime is just a huge part of that, and I think it's incredible what this team has been able to do. I mean, this was a 1-11 team last season, and their spring game was on the main ESPN network. That's pretty remarkable and something that you're never going to see again. I mean, you're probably never going to see that, a 1-11 team. But I do think Colorado next season, this is a team that's got a bright future. But 2023, I just don't see it being a great season. I do think, I mean, 3-9 is already better than last season's just atrocious team. But I do think that 3-9 for next season, it's a step in the right direction. I do think the future is bright for this team. But once again, it's just going to be tough with all these new players that have really never played with each other for a college team. It's going to be a challenge for this team next season. But I'm excited for the future of Colorado and seeing where this team can go. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on the Buffaloes, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.